Have you ever met someone who doesn't talk much, doesn't argue, but still makes the whole room silent when they appear? Not because they are scary, nor because they are trying to overwhelm others, but because their presence carries a special kind of power, a power that comes not from having the loudest voice, but from being a manly silence. We live in an age where everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to speak up to defend their point of view. And social media makes it easier than ever to speak up. But here's the funny thing. The louder the noise, the easier it is for people to lose their true voice. Because true power lies not in how much you say, but in knowing when to speak and when to keep quiet. From a young age, we are taught that being strong means standing up, arguing, and showing off so that others see that we are right. Society glorifies the image of orators. People who can talk continuously without faltering. People who make decisions quickly and decisively. But here's a little-known fact. Sometimes, the quiet person is the most dangerous person in the room. Not because they have an agenda, but because they possess a form of power that most people never tap into, the power of the silent self. The silent self is not a state of resignation or avoidance. It is the deepest part of each of us, where the self is tamed, not reacting just to prove itself. It is when you stand up to provocation, but do not let anger shape your actions. It is when you hear someone say something wrong about you, but do not feel the need to speak up immediately to correct the story. Because you know, the truth doesn't need screaming. You've probably had it. Someone says something that makes your face heat up, your heart race, and every nerve in your body wants to fire back immediately. But then, you choose to stay quiet. You take a deep breath, step back, observe, and you realize, an hour later, a day later, or even a week later, if you'd said it at a different time, the outcome would have been much better. That's the power of silence. It gives you time to control the conversation, rather than being caught up in it. Silence is not doing nothing. On the contrary, silence is a conscious action, a strategic choice. It requires you to go beyond the need for immediate recognition, beyond the urge to protect your ego at every moment. Silence at the right time not only protects your peace, but also makes your words, when spoken, more powerful. Many people today mistakenly believe that silence is a sign of weakness, that you are not brave enough to speak your mind. But look at the truly strong people. They are not always the ones who talk the most. But when they speak, the whole world stops to listen. And that is why I want to invite you to join me on a journey to redefine power. Power is not just the ability to confront, win every argument, or prove to the world that you are right. It is also the ability to stay calm in the midst of a storm, to listen instead of react, and to choose when to strike when it is truly necessary. This video will help you discover why silence is a form of inner power that few possess, how to turn silence into power instead of feeling passive, and how the silent self can transform your life, work, and relationships. So if you've ever felt like you needed to speak up to prove your worth, or if you've ever regretted reacting too quickly, what's coming next will help you see things in a whole new light. Because sometimes, the most powerful voice is when you say nothing at all. There is one skill that, if you master it, will give you the upper hand in any situation. It's not about being smart. It's not about being quick on your feet. It's about the ability to restrain and choose silence when emotions are urging you to explode. Think about it. How many times in your life have you reacted immediately, only to sit there and wish you had kept quiet? How many times has a hasty remark damaged a relationship, cost you an opportunity, or left a bad impression on someone? We humans have a very strong instinct. When we are attacked, when we are misunderstood, or when someone touches our ego, our brain immediately sends out a signal to fight back. We want to prove ourselves right, to regain our honor, to let the other person know that they are wrong. But the problem is, these reactions often come from emotions, not reason. The truly strong person is not the one who can throw out the sharpest retorts, but the one who can create a gap between the moment they are triggered and the moment they decide to respond. That gap may be seconds, minutes, or even days, but it's enough time for them to assess the situation, weigh the consequences, and choose the response that will be in their best interest. Silence, here, is not defeat. On the contrary, it is silently declare, I do not give control of myself to you. Because when you react immediately based on your emotions, you are letting others control your mood and behavior. But when you stay silent, you still maintain control. You do not let the other person know what you are thinking, what you are feeling, and you do not give them the opportunity to manipulate you. I remember a very impressive story about a famous leader. During a press conference, a reporter asked an offensive question, even implying false things about him. Everyone expected him to immediately rebut, but he just smiled, nodded, and said, "Thank you for the question. I will answer when I have more information." A few days later, when the truth was clear, he spoke up, with data, with evidence, and in a tone so calm that no one could deny it. As a result, he not only saved his reputation, but was also seen as more calm, wise, and trustworthy than before. Interestingly, his response did not immediately spark an explosive conversation, but his silence made everyone wait. And when he spoke, the value of his words increased many times over. If you notice, truly brave people rarely rush to respond. They observe, they listen, and they wait for the right moment, because they know that a poorly timed response can ruin everything, while a well-timed response can turn the tide. Try this in your daily life. The next time someone upsets you, instead of reacting immediately, take a deep breath, be quiet, and observe. Let the emotion settle before deciding what to say. You'll be surprised to find that, in many cases, you don't need to say anything at all. And remember, the power of self-control, it's not how many arguments you win, but how many times you let anyone pull you out of your composure. Which is your greatest advantage? There is an interesting thing about humans that we rarely notice. When our mouths are silent, our ears and eyes are much more active. And it is at that moment that we truly say and listen, get what others miss. Think back to the last time you were in a conversation where you didn't interrupt or rush to comment. Did you notice that you heard more? You heard not just the words, but the silences between the words. You began to notice the way someone's voice quivered when they mentioned a topic, the way someone's eyes averted when asked a direct question, or the change in tone when they wanted to emphasize something. When you don't rush to speak, you give yourself time to fully understand the story and the motivation behind it. Many people only listen to respond. not to understand. But the person who knows how to be silent hears both what is said and what is not said. That is why silence becomes a great advantage in communication, because it allows you to grasp the whole picture instead of just seeing a fragment. Silence also opens you up to observation, an underrated but powerful skill. When you're not focused on what to say next, you can pay attention to subtle cues, a furrowed brow, clenched fists, slowed breathing, or a forced smile. These are the nonverbal cues that impatient people miss. And in those seemingly small details, you can discern the truth of the situation. I once met a friend who works in international negotiations. He told me a very interesting trick when he gives a number. He will be silent, no explanation, no further words. And the surprising thing is, this silence puts pressure on the other party to fill the gap with words. Often they will reveal more information or make concessions without you having to ask for them. This is how silence becomes a powerful psychological tool. It not only helps you gather information, but also forces the other person to reveal more. In many cases, it is the silent person who leads the conversation, not the talkative person. But you know what? Doing this is not easy. It requires you to resist the instinct to react immediately. It requires patience and trust that everything you need to know will come to you, if you give it time. Next time you're in a discussion, try this. Instead of responding as soon as the other person finishes speaking, pause for a few seconds. Look them in the eye. Watch how they react to your silence. You might be surprised to see them start to say more, explain more, or reveal what they're really thinking. The power of observation and understanding comes from your slow down to catch up with what others don't notice. And that's an advantage that very few people take advantage of, because they're too busy being heard, instead of actually hearing and seeing. There's one telltale sign of truly confident people. They don't waste time constantly explaining, defending, or proving their worth, because they know true worth doesn't need much advertising. It shines through the way they live, the way they work, and the way they treat others. If you notice, people who say things like, "I am strong," "I am successful," or "I am not afraid of anyone," are often people who are not really sure about themselves. On the contrary, people who are truly strong and confident often let others draw their own conclusions about them. They do not need to shout to be heard, do not need to raise their hands the highest to get attention. It is their calmness that makes others curious and respectful. Silence when necessary is not arrogance. It is a form of exquisite pride. Pride is not to humiliate anyone, but to remind yourself, I know who I am. I know what value I bring. And I don't need to seek recognition from the crowd. I remember a very good saying. A lion does not need to roar to prove that he is king of the jungle. It is the same in the human world. A person who works hard, keeps his promises, and is persistent in his goals will inspire trust more than any speech. They don't say, "I am trustworthy." They prove it through their actions. Have you ever met someone who, just by their presence, people immediately feel their authority, even before they say anything? It's not magic. It's the result of years of consistent action, and hold yourself to your own standards. When your words and actions are consistent, you don't need to protect your reputation, because your reputation is protected by your actions. Think about it. If you have to constantly prove yourself right, constantly explain why you deserve it, you're sending a subtle message that you don't really believe in yourself. But when you stay quiet, focus on the work, and let the results speak for themselves, you're sending a much more powerful message. I'm strong enough not to need validation right now. Being silent here doesn't mean you never speak up. It means you timing. You only speak when your words add value, when they are truly needed, and when they can make a positive impact. It is this restraint that makes it so that when you speak, others take you seriously. When you live this way, you will realize something very interesting. Instead of you chasing for recognition, others will seek you for advice, seek cooperation, or simply want to be near you to learn. And that is the true power of self without proof, a lasting attraction. Not from noise, but from your true depth and value. So next time you feel the urge to speak up, just to defend yourself, ask yourself, is this really necessary? Or can I let my actions speak for themselves? Because sometimes silence not only keeps you calm, but also makes your worth clearer than ever. Do you realize that it's not the big storms that wear us out, it's the small arguments that keep coming back to us every day? We spend hours, even nights, thinking about what others say, rebutting in our heads, and playing out scenarios of, if only I had said this. If only I had responded that. But ask yourself, is all of that really worth your emotional energy? Pointless arguments not only take up time, but also rob you of focus and joy. They tire your mind, and sometimes even push you away from more important goals. Meanwhile, silent like an invisible shield, helping you avoid getting caught up in worthless spirals. Silence doesn't mean you're giving up or admitting you're wrong. It's simply a smart choice. You're choosing not to get sucked into a fight that will end up with nothing more than exhaustion. Another thing that few people notice. Many people regret not what they did, but what they said in anger. Words, once spoken, cannot be taken back, and sometimes they become weapons that come back to hurt you, losing trust, damaging relationships, even closing doors of opportunity that you never had a chance to walk through. Therefore, silence is precious time. It allows you to check your emotions before you act. It gives you the space to ask yourself, is what I'm saying really helpful? Or is it just a temporary outburst? Just asking yourself this question can save you a lot of trouble. And when you make this habit work, you'll reap an even bigger reward, lasting peace. Because when you're not constantly reacting to everything, you worry less about what other people think or say. Your mind becomes clearer, and your energy is channeled into more worthwhile pursuits, personal growth, nurturing positive relationships, and pursuing important goals. There is a saying I really like: don't let the noise outside drown out your inner voice. Silence is how you keep that inner voice clear and strong. Next time you get dragged into a pointless argument, remember that you have a choice. You can either get involved and lose your peace, or you can stay quiet and save your energy for what's really important. And sometimes, the greatest victory is to leave the battle without a sound of sword. When we are young, we often think that to be strong is to argue, to win, to have the last word. But the more you experience, you will realize there are battles that are worthless to win. And sometimes, leave silently is the wisest choice. Mature people understand the value of their time and energy. They don't get caught up in little power games, meaningless fights that make their egos feel good for a few minutes. They know that every minute they spend arguing about trivial things is a minute they lose from moving toward important goals. I remember one time, in a meeting, two colleagues were arguing fiercely about a small detail in a design. Both wanted to prove themselves right. Meanwhile, the manager just listened, not rushing to intervene. When the argument had calmed down, he said a very short sentence. Let's focus on what makes the project successful, not on who is right or wrong. That statement was like a bucket of cold water, causing everyone to be silent, and he saved the whole room hours of useless debate. The truth is, inside each of us there is a desire to be recognized. It likes to hear, "You are right," or "You are good." But people with true character know how to control that need. They do not let their ego control their actions. They understand that the most important victory is to win over themselves, not over others. Silence, in this case, is not avoidance. It is proof that you master yourself. You don't need to speak up to assert your worth, because you know your worth doesn't depend on an argument or the opinions of others. Of course, silence isn't always the answer. There are times when you need to speak up to defend the truth, defend your values, or protect others. But maturity is knowing when words will make a difference, and when words will only make things worse. Wise people choose silence when words will not help. They understand that sometimes the strongest answer is no answer at all. This does not weaken them, but rather makes them more trustworthy and respected. If you notice, influential people are very selective in their words. They don't respond to every attack. They don't answer every challenge. It's this selectiveness that makes the world stop and listen when they speak. So next time you get caught up in a petty fight, ask yourself, is this battle really worth my time and energy? If the answer is no, smile. Keep quiet, and continue on your way. Because sometimes the ultimate true character is not saying the right thing, but knowing when to say nothing at all. Maybe it's time we needed toward defining power. It's not just the ability to control others. It's not just external power, it's self-control. Because true power is not about speaking the loudest, winning the most arguments, or making people fear you. True power is about knowing when to speak, when to keep quiet, and when to act. The silent self is not weakness or withdrawal. It is a strategy, a shield that protects you from pointless battles and helps you save energy for long-term goals. It is the strength of someone who does not need to prove themselves all the time. But when they do, their words and actions can change the game. We live in a noisy world, where everyone wants to speak up. Everyone wants to assert themselves. But in that noise, silence becomes a new form of power, the power of patience, of wisdom, and of self-mastery. The strong person is not the one who talks the most. The strong person is the one who keeps your word for the best moment, so that every word spoken has weight, every action taken has meaning. So the next time you find yourself caught in an argument, provoked, or feeling pressured to respond, try stopping. Take a deep breath. Let the silent self, your voice speaks, not with hasty words, but with steady, sure actions. Because sometimes, the greatest power is when you say nothing, but the whole world still listens. If you have read this far, It is not just a coincidence. I believe that your energy has hit the right frequency with what is shared today. This is not book theory, but the experiences, the profound lessons I have learned over many years. And if you really listen and apply, your life will never be the same again. If this message resonates with you, please leave a like to let me know you're on board, and subscribe to continue receiving values that help you grow your inner self and enlighten your spirit. Welcome to the journey of understanding and transformation.